guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Julie Mae and welcome to Bookmas. So for today's video, I've actually read so far in this year 118 books, and for today's video I'm actually going to sit down and tell you which of these 118 are worth your time. So basically my favorite books and my best books of the year so far, and the ones I would go out and recommend and ask you to read, because 118 is a lot and out of them I didn't really enjoy, I'd say maybe like 70%. The math is obviously really wrong, and so I don't want you to waste your time on those. I want you to read these because they are actually worth your time and amazing, to me at least. This is kind of like a recommendations video. It's kind of like me telling you my favorite books of the year, and let's just get into it. So now for context, before we start off, I am in a different place, and that's because I was originally going to record this video back at home with the books I had physically, show them to you, and the ones I didn't have I'd have on screen, but I didn't get around to doing it because I was busy with a couple of other things. I am on vacation now, so I'm not at home. I don't have access to my bookshelf, which is why the original plan has been scrapped. So I have edited a document with all my favorite books in it, and I'm going to show it to you on screen so I can like hold it up and talk about it, because it'll save my time in editing, considering the fact that I'm here for my cousin's wedding, which is happening later in the week, also around the time this video goes out, and naturally I want to be present in the moment there rather than editing pictures of 30 books into the video here. So it'll save my time and it'll be easier for me, which is why please ignore that before we get into it. And I also quickly wanted to say, I know a lot of booktubers are doing the video wherein it's their favorite books and their least favorite ones of the year, but I personally want to choose to focus on only my favorites, because there's a lot I can say about bad books, but I don't want to. I want to focus my time and attention on the bright side. That's my goal for the new year, and I want to start inculcating it now, and by that I just want to focus on all positive stuff and all positive books. So if it's worth your and my time, might as well spend our time talking about the books that actually deserve it. So that is why I will not be focusing on or talking about even a single book that I did not like in this video. It's all my favorites. So let's just get into it. So starting off at the top, the document says my favorite books of 2024, already starting off perfect, and we can start off strong now. So the first book for this video is The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. Now all of the books in this video are actually already read in different reading vlogs. I think there is like a 2% chance that they're not, unfortunately, but most of them are. So you can either go look up thumbnails on my channel to see if like the photos are on the thumbnail, or you can go ahead and check like the description box, because I have every single video listing which book I'll be speaking about in that video in the description if you want more final and like detailed thoughts on these books. But I'm gonna brief it through and we can talk about them. Now this is the first best book I read this year because the plot twist really got me. I'm not really gonna summarize the book for you because some books I have on the list just because of vibes, but this book I remember specifically. I haven't read like a lot of good Agatha Christie recently, and so I picked this book up with like really poor hopes. My friend said it was good, and our reading tastes aren't very similar, but if she says it was good and I read it and I enjoyed it, I think it was worth it. Also, I think I binged it in like a whole day. I just sat down, read it back to back, and it's so crazy because like the plot twist, I thought I guessed it, I did not. It was kind of crazy, and this is the first book on our list. So the second book on our list is A Christmas Carol. Now this was my reread of it. I read this book maybe back in 5th grade, so at least like a few years ago at this point. I didn't remember a lot of it, I just remember that I really liked it, and it was like a warm cozy book. So I read it at the beginning of 2024 this year. It was a reread, like I said. It was also a 5 stars. It made me cry, it made me feel all these fun emotions, and this is the kind of book I would recommend to every single person if you haven't already read it, because this is the kind of book that you need to read at least once in your lifetime. The message behind it at the end is so sweet, it's so wholesome, heartwarming, and I feel like everyone needs to read it. The next book that made it to this list, to no one's surprise, is A Coat of Thorns and Roses by Sariah Maas. Now I read this book in a separate reading vlog for it, and I couldn't put it down. It's like, I think the first fantasy I've ever read in my life, especially after Harry Potter and getting into reading recently, and it's so crazy because like this was the perfect book to start off with. It's like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and there's so much I loved about it, and now I'm on the second one and it's already gotten so good, because if this was Beauty and the Beast, the one I am on right now is Hades and Persephone, and it's so good. You won't even imagine how good it is. I know it's overhyped, but it's hyped for a good reason, because it's that good, and that's the reason it made it to the list, because you guys need to pick it up. If you haven't like gotten into fantasy, this is the perfect book to use to get into it, and I recommend this to every single person. My entire friend group is reading it or has read it at this point because of my recommendation, and it's just so good I haven't stopped thinking about it. The next book on this list is Elsewhere. There are obviously different reading vlogs that encompass all of the books in this video, and I don't think I gave like concepts for any, but I have to mention the concept of this book to get you to read it. Essentially, there's this girl, she's gonna turn 16 and start driving and do all the fun things in life, except she gets hit by a car and she ends up passing away. So now that she's dead, she can't, become 16 and do all those things she wanted, and she actually ends up going to a place called Elsewhere, this one. And essentially, when she's in Elsewhere, she starts aging backwards. Instead of turning 16 the next year, because she's currently 15, she actually turns 14. She's going backward in age, and she can't really now hit the goals or the things she wanted to. And so because of that, she's sad, but that's the whole concept of the book. And it's so fun and interesting the way, it is. But at the same time, if you're going into it, please be ready to be heartbroken, because this is so gut-wrenching and like so emotional. It really got me. I was crying so hard at this book. This is probably like the second saddest book I read all year, and it is so good. There's so much that's amazing about it, and you have to read it. The Do-Over by Lynn Painter, because this book makes it to every single list at this point, and I had to mention it. It's got like the Groundhog's Day trope in it, wherein she keeps repeating like Valentine's Day because something goes wrong every single time, and she watches her boyfriend cheat on her. There's all these horrible things happening to her that day, and it's not the best day, but she's repeating it, and that's the best part, because like every time she repeats it, she's just like having the worst time. Except this one time when she's like repeating it, she says to herself, why don't I do whatever I want, because there's no consequences to it, I'm just going to repeat the day. And so because of that, she does all these crazy things, and that's what the book is about. And I really loved it. I loved the romance in it, especially. I loved the concept of it, because I have read like a couple of other books like that, but the fact that it's taking place on Valentine's is like perfect to me. And she's a bit of like a hopeless romantic like I am. It's my first Lynn Painter book. The Taylor Swift references were also amazing, and it's just a fun good old time. I also had my sister read it, and she said it's one of the best books she read this year. So that should already tell you why you should read it, because she doesn't read a lot, let alone have these kind of books make it to the top of her list, which is why, it's a good book. The Good Part by Sophie Cousens. Essentially, this girl wants to like skip to the good part of her life, and she wakes up one morning and she's like in her 40s, she's got kids, she's married, and she was like 20 something in the worst part of her life. So all these years later, she skipped to the good part of her life, except she's not sure if she wants it anymore. She wants to go back, and that's what the story is about. It's so interesting because I feel like all of us want to do that at some point in life, except this actually shows you the true essence behind it, and it's such an interesting book to like think over and just like listen to or read and like actually ponder about in your mind, and it's a good book to read. The Chemistry of Love. This book is one of the best romances I've read this year, and the author actually sent me 2 of her other arcs, one of the ones that was going to come out this year and one that comes out next year. Can't wait to get to those. But essentially, there's this girl, she works in like this makeup brand or like cosmetics brand or whatever, and she actually likes one of the brothers there. So the other brother tries to set her up with the brother she likes, because the brother she likes is getting engaged to marry this like gold digger, except she ends up falling for the brother that was setting them up in the first place. And it's a good story. I loved it. The romance in this is so good. There's so much banter, there's so much chemistry, it's slow burn, the way they talk to each other is amazing. It's so funny as well, because like she lives with her grandparents and they have birds, and the way that aspect of the story happens is also so amazing, because like it's funny, and I was laughing the entire time. Also, I forgot to say there's no spice in this, and so the fact that it built up so very well that it made it to like one of the best books of the year, and the fact that there's just so much that's amazing about it, because nothing really happens between them like in terms of romance heavy towards the end of the book. The slow burn really got me in this, so please read it. Now, this book was actually sent to me as an arc, and that's why it was like really surprising to me. Not because arcs are bad, but because at the time I read this, most of the other arcs I'd read that were sent to me weren't as amazing. But the plot twist in this book really got me. There's this woman, she's like drunk texting her like crush from like back in school times, and he responds, except it's like a mystery thriller, and it goes crazy at the end because I didn't guess it. And the way that happened, and the way then this book leaves off on like a cliffhanger is so crazy and amazing to me. You should read it. The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. Before I get into this, I just want to say this book was 4.75 stars at the time I read it. I was also sent the arc for this, but then now I'm on vacation again. I bought like the physical with my own money. I have it right here beside me, and I'm actually going to go ahead and do a reread. So that already says more than enough about the book. But it follows Anna and Liam, one of my favorite book couples of the year. They're doing like a fake marriage of convenience or whatever. That's one of my favorite tropes. There's a bit of like slow burn in it. It's set during vacation. His family is filthy rich, so there's that aspect to it, and they're married to get his inheritance, which is also so funny. And the best part is the side characters, especially his brother and his sister-in-law. best part of the book. They pulled and carried this book on their shoulders, and it was so freaking good. You need to read it. I know I keep saying that everything of the past few books were arcs, but genuinely, this is my own honest opinion. This was also an arc. She's like a serial killer who kills bad men, except she's like this wealthy socialite, so no one like suspects her, because she's like the perfect woman specimen that, you know, they want in society. And so it's so funny going along with her, seeing the way she's like sarcastic and talks about everyone, and the way she does what she does. And it's genuinely such a really good book that you need to read it. I also ended up buying it with my own money. I have the physical at home, and I can't wait to go ahead and pick it up and reread it at some point, because there's like a plot twist on the very last page that I did not see coming, and it's so crazy. You need to read it for that alone. Now, I've read this book in like 6 different videos. It took me a bit to get through it, but regardless, it was a good book, and I feel like if I had read it and finished it at a time other than summer, so I finished this in the summertime when I was reading for 24 hours in this same location, but if I read it during like Halloween, October time, this would have 100% been a 5 stars. But you know, it wasn't because of the summer setting or whatever. But regardless, the banter between them is so sweet. He's a vampire, she's trying to like make him adapt to modern day society, and so that's amazing, because like, you know, chemistry between them goes off the charts. I really enjoyed it, and he does such sweet things for her. It's a little acts of service coded too, because like he buys her oranges and stuff, and you know, he's buying her saucepans, except he thinks the pans are to cook sauce, so he's like asking her if she likes sauce. And for that alone, that's such a good fun book to read. I can't wait to read the second one in the series. It's so good. I'm really gonna try to rush this list now, because it's been like 13 minutes of me talking uncut to the camera, and you know, I have like 30 books nearly on this list. So the next one I have is called Long Weekend. Now, I read this again as an arc. I read it during my 24-hour readathon, but this book was so good, because at the beginning I was just like, you know, it's fine, it's mid, but as I kept reading it, this had my attention locked. And the last like 100-200 pages of it was so crazy, because it was like, you need to like survive. The stakes are very much dependent on your life. If you do one wrong thing, you could end up dying, and people are already dying, people are being killed. And so it's so crazy, because like, it goes wild in this book. It has one of my favorite like thriller tropes, and that's Vacation Got Wrong, wherein one of them keeps dying every like hour or so every day. And it's so crazy, because like, this book was genuinely one of the best ones I've read this year. The ending, you get like a epilogue from the perspective of the murderer, who wasn't even who I expected, and it was wild. Now, I read this book on the way back home, I believe, on the car ride from vacation, and I remember it being so sweet. I was giggling the entire time. It's very summer coded, so try not to read it around this time of the year. It's still like cold out now, but regardless, I remember it being so sweet, so cute. This is the kind of book you take with you to the beach, and you know, it was so funny as well. Side characters were amazing in this book. The banter and the humor was good. There's so many other aspects to it, and it also gave like a couple of subtle life lessons along the way, so I had a good time reading. This is YA, I believe, so that makes it even better, because those books are so fun in my opinion, and so I had such a good time reading this, and the side characters really just pulled this book. I have to say, I think this might be one of, or maybe the most amazing mystery thriller I've read this year. Basically, there's this girl, she's like working as a spy. Her name is Evie Potter, except it's not actually, that's her code name for the assignment, and so it's her fake name, except she messes up on an assignment. So there's this other woman who shows up with her real name. She's not actually Evie Potter, but this other woman shows up looking identical to her with her actual name, and that's like a threat to Evie from her boss, you know, trying to take away her identity. So she has to figure out stuff about the boss, stuff about the new woman. There's all these other crazy things going on. And this book is so wild, because I was like so on the edge of my seat the entire time, because something crazy happens like every chapter, and it's so fun and good to read, especially if you're like on like an airplane or something back home or going somewhere, because I feel like you could just sit down and binge this in 2 sittings. It's that good. And the plot twist in this and the ending really got me. Hopefully there's more by this author, because I genuinely need to read it, but like, it was so good. Okay, so there's this girl in this book. I believe it was written by like a popular booktuber as well, so that's so fun. But the girl in the book, she like goes on like a study abroad program, and she has all these expectations and fun things out of it, except, you know, stuff keeps going wrong. It doesn't really happen her way. And then one day she ends up like realizing that from that study abroad trip, she's grown up, she's become a woman now. She ends up living a life she regrets, and she's hating on it, except then it becomes again but better. Something happens, and she actually ends up like repeating that same study abroad trip. So she goes back in time for some reason. It's kind of like Groundhog's Day, but at the same time it's not. And she's got like a whole chance to do it again, but better. so her study abroad experience tried to fix it or whatever, and that's what this book is about. And there were so many fun experiences in this, and I could really relate to her as a student in a lot of senses as well. So it was a fun book to read. I really enjoyed it. It was almost a 5-star for me, but then something happened at the end that kind of ruined it for me in like the romance sense basis. So keep that in mind, but it was really good, and I really love the life lessons subtly shown in this one as well. This book was the first book I gave 5 stars this year. This book was the saddest book I read this year. This book was the book I cried most to this year. So that's all I'm gonna say. Please read this book. It's one of the best books I've read this year. There's this girl, her dad has been diagnosed with cancer and he's got only 3 months left to live. So they go to like their summer house cabin thing, and they're trying to spend the last few moments with their dad of his life over there, and it's so sad and emotional and gut-wrenching. And it broke my heart, but I kind of put it back together at the end, and it was sweet. And I keep remembering it, but I don't know if I'll ever read it, because like the way it made me feel so sad after was remarkable that a book can do that to you. This was my second 5-star of the year. I read this back to back with the first one because it was really sad, and I just wanted like a palate cleanser 3-star romance, the stereotypical. So I picked this book up, but it was so good because it was everything a fun, happy book can give you. There's this girl, Andy. She's trying to relive her mom's college experience because she lost her mom like very young on early in life. And so, she's trying to live the way her mom probably would have. And there's all these other things that happen. And, she's having the best time enrolling in these competitions that her mom used to take part of. The love interest in this book, Milo, he made his own coffee blend. He like works at this bagel place. And I keep advertising this book by just saying that because that is enough. By itself, it's perfect for me, and you need to read this book. It's also YA, so there's no like spice or anything, and the way the banter and the tension and the slow burn in this book is dragged out, oh my god, these kind of books, as you can probably tell, it's a similar notion in my videos, is my favorite type of book to read, and so you need to go ahead and read it. Before anything, I want to say this is the book, if I have to give it an award for making me laugh the most, I will, because in this, the girl, she has like this podcast or whatever, and there's not a lot I remember about it. I read this on the basis of vibes, but what I do remember is the romance really pulled it for me. This book was amazing, and the way the girl talks, she's so sarcastic. There's everything amazing and cool about her. She's like so badass at the same time, and like one of the best books I've read just for that reason. It made me laugh, it made me feel, and this really made me enjoy romance again, because like after the previous book I showed you, I didn't really find like great romances I was reading, and like I was sick of the genre at the moment, but this really pulled it back for me, and it showed me why romance is my favorite genre. In the same video as that, I read this book. It's my first Frida book, and it made sense to put like at least one Frida book in this video because I think she's my top author of this year. I believe I've read like 6 books by her at this point, and reading another one, it's kind of crazy. But there's these people, they are going on vacation goes wrong. It's my favorite trope, like I said. One of them are dying one by one. That's why the book is called that. And so it's very interesting watching them try to survive in this forest campsite. And so it's something you can read during winter time, even though it's set in July, which is fun. The ending really got me because I did not see that coming. I was up till 4 in the morning trying to figure it out, and this is so fast paced, you can sit down and read it in 2 sittings. So again, it's something you can read when you're like on a plane or something, because like it goes by so fast, you won't even see it coming. And it's a psychological thriller, so you're blaming everyone, but I doubt you'll blame the person who's actually behind it because it was so wild. My sister got me this book for Christmas now because I wanted a physical. I have it right beside me. I'll show it to you at the end of the video. I got it with me to reread, and that just says like a lot because I read this year. I read it only a couple of months ago at this point. I also read it in the same video as the last 2 books, and like that video was such a slay because we found so many good books from it. But like this was so good. Annabelle Monaghan, the author, has a very good trait wherein she writes the specific human emotions so well that she incorporates words exactly the way they need to be. There's not one extra or one less word in it, and the way she just does it is so amazing to me that you have to read it for that alone. And like it's Annabelle Monaghan. What other reason do you need? She is the perfect author. She has made it to my top 5 list this year, and this was the first time I was reading her books, so like it's amazing. You need to check it out. Now this was sent to me as an arc. I didn't really have expectations from it because it has reverse age gap in it when she's older and he's younger, and reverse or just age gap in general is not one of my favorite tropes, but it was so funny. There was so much innuendo in this, and not just that, they were so humorous and their banter was so crazy, and like the tension in it was so nice that I loved reading it, and I have to recommend it to everyone despite the fact that it was sent to me as an arc. I'm just saying, this is my own personal opinion. You should read this book. And the author sent me her Christmas book as well for free. another arc has come my way, and so I can't wait to read it now because it's the perfect time to read it. And I'm so excited to read more of her work because of how good this one was. I read it in my 24-hour readathon, had the best time, and I'm telling you, this book was one of the best ones I've read. And I keep thinking about it because there's like a well-timed chicken emoji in this that keeps coming up. That sounds so random to say, but read the book and you'll understand. It was so good. Now, I didn't find a lot of great books until like later in the year when I was trying to get through my TBR during exam time. It was like a whole specific dedicated video, and in that I found Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. It's again YA, there's no spice, and the kids, they're like teenagers in it. They're like my children to me. All I want is their happiness, and they've been friends their whole life, except as they grew up, they like grew apart and they became enemies, somewhat rivals. And so while they deep down want to be friends still, they from like their outside selves kind of show this like fighting, kind of like bantering selves just to like push the other one away, to depict themselves as enemies. And so it's a great book to read. It also takes place in like a wilderness camp or something because they're trying to get like scholarships and stuff, and that's part of it, and that was so fun to read. So definitely pick it up. This is the one book out of this whole video I will not recommend to you. If you're a woman, I strongly believe, and I've said this in every single one of my videos that this book has come up in, you should read this book if you're a woman, but I am not telling you to read it. And if you do end up reading it, check triggers, check traumas. This book is dense, there's so much in it, and it made me scared of every single man in my vicinity throughout the time I read it and after. And like every time you read this book, it's like a new layer has been pulled off, because every chapter something or the other happens that's even crazier than the previous, and you're just like, how much worse can it get? But it can get so bad, and it goes down bad, crazy, all the worst things happen, and you're just like, there's no way in hell that'll happen, and it does. And this was one of the first, or I think this is the first and only mystery thriller book I've ever cried to, so you should definitely read it. But like at the same time, I'm not asking you to read it, and I'm not telling you in any way that you should, because the way it scarred me is so wild. And I'm still gonna have all the women in my life read it, but you should if you want to open your eyes to the world and the way men are genuine psychopaths. That's all. Also, I'm in no way saying that this is a good book. It's full of trauma and torture. It's one of my best books of the year. That's all I want to say for context and anything before we move on to the next book, because it's so heavy and traumatizing. So keep in mind, it's not like the best book, but for me it makes it to my list because of many things that it made me feel, and the way it's opened my eyes to the way things are actually out there, because I feel like I read so many mystery thrillers are just outrageous, but this one truly just shows what real life could be. And I'm already getting scared talking about it. I was scared the entire time reading it. I don't want to talk about it anymore, so I'm going to move to the next one. Also read in the same video as the previous two was The Gracier. This was like another fantasy I read this year. Had to include it because it was so good. These women at the age of 16 are sent away from their houses so they can let out the magic that comes within them out in the open, and then come back and settle down as women, become part of like a family, get married, have kids, whatever. But basically it talks about their gracier when they go out at 16 and do the magical stuff. And it's really good. It was crazy. I didn't see a lot of things coming, but the ending fell a little flat for me. I wish there was more, but it's fine because it was really good regardless, and I had a good time. This is also the book that actually pushed me into wanting to read more fantasy. So after I was done recording for this video, I actually got into it, but I'll talk about those after I'm done, getting through the next books on the list. Beach Read by Emily Henry. I'm trying not to mention this in every other book video, but genuinely this book may have changed the trajectory of my life. I want every single word of it imprinted upon my soul because of how good it was, and I think I'm going to reread this every single year at this point, because there's so much about this book that makes me feel so many different ways. And I just love Emily Henry, would read anything by her. I have her backlist to get to over the summer next year at some point, and so you should definitely read it if you can. Okay, so we're nearing the end of the list. Next I have Ninth House. This is now me getting into my fantasy era. The next few books are all fantasy, and that just says every single fantasy book I read is going to make it to the list, because fantasy is fastly becoming my new favorite genre. It's kind of crazy, but this one has like secret societies involved. There's like a murder that could be traced back to the societies, and there's the main girl who can see like dead people. That's her magical power or whatever. And so she kind of wants to follow what's going on. She wants to see if the murder connects to the secret societies. This talks about the ninth house, which is Lethe, which kind of runs the other secret societies, and she's part of it. And the story goes from there. The second book fell flat for me, but this one, the way this happened, nothing happens till 70% that had my attention. But after that, I was just so invested, couldn't put the book down. The ending got me, and it was great. This book very much felt like a house moving castle retelling, which is obviously one of my favorite books like of all time. I think I keep talking about it. I have like a whole video dedicated to it. But it was really good. That's all I can really remember remember. I think it was like a bit Agatha-ish as well. But there's this girl, she like sacrifices herself to the sea god to become his bride. So he's like merciful on her people. Except, he's cursed. Something's going on with that. And it's very interesting to read. I really love the romance in this and you guys should pick it up. Also, I breezed through this book. I read it like only a couple of days and I had so much fun reading it that genuinely it's one of the best fantasy books I've read. And if someone comes to me and asks me to give them like a book rec to get into fantasy, this is going to be the first book I recommend because of how amazing it was. Next up, we have The Prison Healer. I'm only including the first book, but by this I mean like the whole series because I finished it this year, and it talks about Kiva. She's in like a prison. She's trying to go through these ordeals by trial. So there's like, fire, earth, air, water on the behalf of this rebel queen who also gets into the jail because the rebel queen is dying and she's like part of like the infirmary and she wants to cure the queen but she can't, so she does the trials to get them to become free. Except it goes so much deeper than that, and the third book was so crazy. I gave it 4.5 stars. Cried at the ending. It was amazing. I wish those people really existed because they felt like my best friends, and it is the best or one of the best fantasy series I've read this year because of how amazing it was. The romance in this was so sweet. The side characters added so much to the book. There was so much personality in this. There was so much amazing happening. And the plot twists were really crazy because this book and the second book in the series ended up on the biggest and worst cliffhangers of my life. Couldn't wait to pick up the next one. And so I'm so happy I did because this was so good. This, I think, is the last book I gave 5 stars this year. I don't really remember giving any other book apart from this or after this 5 stars. Essentially, there's this girl, she gets a book. It's the Book of Doors. Any door she travels to while holding the book, she can go through anywhere in the world. Except there's more books like this that can cause more harm than good. So there's like the Book of Pain, the Book of Sadness, whatever. And there's these people called book hunters who essentially collect and gather these books to like use as an army. And if it falls in the wrong hands, it could be very dangerous. And so there's this other guy who's like a book librarian trying to collect these books and put them away for good use rather than, for using it for evil purposes. And so that is the premise of the story. It had me on the tip of my toes. The messages behind these books really got me, but this one especially was so subtle and sweet, and there were so many amazing things that happened in it that I really loved it. And I feel like every chapter just sped by to the point where I was like, oh my god, I wish this book was 500 pages longer because I would like read and love every single second of it. Now this book, if I remember correctly, is split up into 5 different like short stories, and every one of them kind of gives you like a subtle message or kind of way to improve your life, because they're these people, they go to this librarian for book recs, and it essentially talks about how the correct book rec can change your life. And my entire channel is based on recommending books to you, so this book really resonated with me because I feel like, yeah, if you could find the correct book, it could essentially change your life. And this book also kind of changed my life. I'm not being dramatic, but like it was amazing, and you should pick it up and read it if you have the free time, because like it goes through so fast, the 5 stories, and I had an amazing time reading. This book I actually just featured in the video that went out last night. So it's so funny because I was editing the video speaking about my thoughts on this book last night, and now I'm here to tell you why this has made it to my best books of the year list. And so essentially it's about this girl. She steals the manuscript of like her dead author friend and she publishes it under her name. So she like steals success and stuff, and there's a lot of like literally debate and like discussions behind it, but like it talks about her moral dilemma and her guilt behind it, and it's so interesting and fun, and you should read this because it goes crazy. And the ending, it fell a little flat for me, and I understand why, but I wasn't too mad at it because I did get the conclusion I kind of wanted. And I wish there was like a second part or like an extended epilogue to it, because I'd love to keep reading and see what happens next. But essentially, she's getting caught for stealing the book. People don't really believe it's hers. There's like discourse about it on the internet. Cancel culture is spoken about. It's just a really good literary fiction book if you want to get into the genre, because like some of them are so boring or so deep that I feel so dumb reading it. But you don't need to be like really intelligent to read this. You just need to have some sort of like attention span and just pick it up because it's so good. And it's by R.F. Kuang, who wrote Babel, so it was very intimidating to me. But genuinely, if you need to read her books, please read this. This is the only book I've read by her, but if I read one more, she's gonna become my favorite author because it was so good. And finally, we've reached the last book on this list. It's The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Now, I put this on the list like a couple of weeks ago when I had just recently read it. I don't know if it'd still make it to the list, but I thought it was really sweet. in terms of the autumnal vibes I got from it, because it's very fall coded. So please don't read it right now, because genuinely it wouldn't hit. The only reason it hit for me was because of the fall vibes. But apart from that, the cover is so cute, the story was cute, it was wholesome only because of the fall vibes, because I think if you remove the fall aspect, this book would have zero plot or like story or substance that would keep me invested. But I had a good time reading. I think the cover is so sweet. I think the covers of all books in the series are so cute, and I can't wait to read some more. I've actually started the second book in the series and I'm reading it right now on vacation. So hopefully when my vacation vlog comes out, I will have read it by then and you guys can see my thoughts on the second one. But it's so nice, and the romance fell flat for me in this one, but the book, the whole fall vibes carried it for me, and that's why I made it to the list, and it was really fun to read. And so that's it. We have reached the end of the vlog, me showing you my favorite books of the year. Like I said, I will not be showing you any of my least favorite, because I feel like, when you watch my videos, I've already invested enough time into talking negative stuff about the book rather than, expressing my good feelings on it, which is why there's more than enough negative content around and I don't want to add to it. So I'm not going to show you my negative or my hated books of the year, which is why the video ends right now. That's it for today's kind of recommendations vlog. I don't even know what to call it, but hopefully you guys had a fun time coming along with me talking about my best books of the year, because there were so many on the list, and like I said, I'd rather focus my time talking about books I personally enjoyed rather than books I didn't enjoy so much. And this was a fun video to show you guys as well, because this realistically shows that it doesn't really matter how many books you read. I read 118. The amount on this list, I'll put it up on screen because I don't know how many there are, but I think it's approximately like a 30, and that just shows that it's more about quality than quantity. Even if you read 100 books, the fact that I even found these good 30 is more than enough for me, because that says a lot. And so it's more about how you need to read books you actually enjoy rather than books you don't. And hopefully you got like a couple of recommendations out of this video as well. But that's it for today's Bookmas video. Hopefully you guys had a fun time coming along with me. I've been yapping so long, so I'm gonna go drink some water. But that's it for today's vlog. Like, comment, share, subscribe. YouTube things if you enjoyed today's vlog, and I'll see you guys hopefully in tomorrow's Bookmas video. I love saying this, honestly, coming every day and telling you in Bookmas that I'm going to see you tomorrow, because I have so much fun with you, and I will see you tomorrow. So I'll see you and bye. I hope you have a great rest of your day.